The Laney PA60. I've changed the valves to a pair of Marshall branded Svetlanas, a match pair. I matched them on the Avo, and you put them in, and they're running on the Variac 535 volts AC. Whole amp is drawing just under half an amp input off the mains. The two grid voltages across 470 ohms. The grid's running at 530 volts, grid 3 screen on the EL34s. One is drawing 2.74 and the other's drawing about 2.8, so they're pretty close. That's across 470 ohms. So the current being drawn on the grids will be on this, you see on this meter, 2.8, say, divide by 470 ohms. There you go. You can just see the dot there, 6 milliamps. And so running at nearly 530 volts at 6 milliamps, so times 530 equals 3 watts. So over 3 watts dissipation on the grid 3s. Now the valves are actually drawing 0.86 volts across the 10 ohm resistor. That means it's 86 milliamps, or say 43 milliamps per valve. Now the valve anodes are running about 560 volts, so we can do a calculation here for the dissipation on whole dissipation on the valve of 560 times 0.43 for each valve, comes up 24 watts. See the dot there, 24 watts per valve dissipation. So that's for the whole valve. So the anode dissipation less the dissipation we said for the grid was 3, so it's running about 21 watts on the anode, 3 on the grids. Now these are 25 watts max dissipation on the anodes and 8 watts on the grid. Well, dissipation on the grids go up a lot when these are run flat out. So these are running pretty hot at the moment, but they seem to be quite happy. You can measure the temperature. I'll try and measure the temperature. Oops, there. What hottest part? 180 odd. 180 odd on that one. Maximum is 250 degrees C on the envelopes. So voltage is still stable at 530. That's measured on the grid, not on the anode. The anode's about 30 volts higher. They're still running about 2.7 odd, 2.8 odd, so they're pretty closely matched. So it goes to show you, you put in a decent set of valves and it can take it. Don't put any cheap valves in it, because they will not take those sort of voltages. But these Marshall ones seem, Svetlana seem very good indeed. Quick look inside for you before I finish up. Those are the 470 ohms on the valves. Valve bases are very good actually, no arcing, no burning through, and they're the originals. I've dropped it on 2 resistors there in line, 1.2k each, 2.4k, to drop the voltage a bit on the grids, because these valves would be running over 25 watts. When it was built, I guess valves could take it then. It's really not worth it. If anyone buys this and wants to put it back, you just move those 2 wires I've soldered on there, take out these 2 resistors, wire it down to the 470 ohms, which has got a wire joining the 2 470 ohms on the 2 EL34 bases there, so it's pretty straightforward. There is your 10 ohm on the cathode of the EL34s, which is actually joined together I think that was put in there for manufacturing, just to check the current. They put the probes on like I have to make sure it's not, valves aren't running too hot. And so there's the amp. It's all working now. We're going to put it back together. I'm going to screw it back together and run a guitar through it, and then it'll be finished. Couple of notes, just finishing up. This has got a nice choke, partridge choke. Some of them didn't have the choke, so they did have a big resistor, but the choke is far superior, far superior than the resistor. Knocks the hum down and gives a much better power supply. Everything else is fine. Another note, which I said earlier, is when you switch this amp on, the voltage leaps up to getting on for 650 volts until the valves start conducting. So these capacitors have lasted very well. The originals, there's no problem with them. They can really take a hammer in there, rated at 400 volts each, so equivalent of 800 total, so they can take it. All the other components are original, except which I've decided are the two little bypass capacitors on the backs of the pots, about 100 picofarads. Someone has soldered them on probably because they wanted to use a guitar, just give it a little more treble. So there you go, it's running stable, hot but stable, everything's fine. Okay, I'm going to put it all back together now.